Yes, boys. Yes, boys. Yes, boys. We are live. Welcome to the stream. Today is Monday, July 7th, 2025. The time is 3:42 p.m. Winding down here 4 more days and I'll be in Serbia. This will be a very fun, very liberating, very productive trip. Yeah, I'm excited to meet the guys in the entourage out in Serbia. If you're wondering who I am, well, firstly, let me set the stage. The topic of today is this is why your approaches are going nowhere. This video is going to be more high level, more mindset, and less technical, less about the mechanics of the approach, and more about how you're going into each approach and what you're thinking before you even go in, which is likely why it's going a certain way. What up, Ish? Yes, Ish is in the chat. Good to see you. Thank you for liking the stream already, dog. I appreciate you for that. And so, firstly, if you're curious who I am, my name is Ephraim. I'm 25 years old. 2 years ago, my dating life sucked, and I paid somebody to teach me how to recreate myself and recreate my dating life. And so I flew to Warsaw, Poland, learned the art of daytime cold approach, landed back in San Francisco, a wizard with the skill set. And so now I'm aiming to teach guys exactly what I went through and exactly what I did to get this sort of a dating life. And this content is geared towards guys who already have life for the most part figured out. What I mean by that is you've already got something going for you, including you've got a look to yourself. Yeah, meaning you've worked on the extremities, you found a hairstyle that works for you, you found a clothing style that works for you, you've already got some level of social skills in the mix, so you're not starting out from square one, just left your laptop in your apartment for the first time and trying to interact with society. But no, you actually already know how to look people in the eye, you already know how to hold a conversation to a certain extent, and you've already got some level of you've got some income stream coming in. You're not living at uncle's sofa, yeah, uncle's house on the sofa where you're not doing anything with your life. So essentially, what I'm saying is this content is geared towards guys who pretty much are already excelling in life, but their dating life still lags behind, and they're confused why that is. Just like me, that's where I was at when I was 23 years old, and I reached out to Christian, who ended up teaching me how to approach girls. I looked around. I was working a 6-figure remote programming job. I already looked exactly like this, already had decent social skills, already had a fun, vibrant friend group, and I was still having no results with girls, and I couldn't figure out why. So that's why I make this content, is for guys that are in a similar position. They, for the most part, have their life, pretty much trending in a positive direction, but their dating life is still lagging behind. So I'm here to help explain why that can be the case and what we can do to fix that problem. All right, what's going on, Mo? Good to see you, dog. Good to see you in the stream. All right, so let's talk. So the topic, as you see, this is why your approaches are going nowhere. So a thing that I'm noticing, a very common trend I'm noticing in both of the school communities, is that guys are positioning themselves in the approach, not talking about how they're physically positioned, but like how they're verbally positioning themselves. They're verbally positioning themselves in the approach in a very poor manner. So what I mean is, this is very clear in text threads. It's almost easier to identify in text threads than it is over an audio infield. But same thing, you can hear it clear as day on an audio infield as well, where he, the subject of, let's say, whoever I'm talking about, when they're going in for their approach, he is positioning himself in such a way that he's communicating to the girl that she has something that he wants and he doesn't yet have, and he has nothing that she wants, and he's almost trying to like sell the girl a product, obviously product being himself. But just the very way that that is positioned is already starting you off on the wrong foot. Yeah, as you're positioning yourself as though she has something that you're after, she has something that you don't yet have. Therefore, you're trying to leap over these hurdles that she's putting in front of you and cater to what she wants and what she likes, in hopes that she will grant you with your wish, right? Which is what you're after this entire time, sex. And I'm going to explain why I think this is a very poor way to go about approaching, and honestly, why that's probably a big reason for a guy who, let's say, is putting in reps, but is just not getting anywhere, not getting any sorts of results with this skill set. All right. So, first thing I wrote is she has something you want. So things are, firstly, excuse me. I also see this a lot in text threads, right? Where the girl is essentially dismissing the guy and saying something along the lines of, this happened in a text thread I read yesterday from one of the guys who sent it over. The girl said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm busy today, but maybe when I get back from my trip, maybe we can go on a date then," right? And she said it, she phrased it in that way. And I remember the question he asked me with that thread was, um, how should I see this whole interaction? How should I reply? Should I reply at all? Should I just kind of shrug this off and keep approaching? Which obviously that's always going to be my answer, right? But it's just interesting that, I'm realizing some guys can't necessarily see this quite yet. And I've seen it for a while now. Yeah, I've had this skill set built and buttoned up for a few years now. So I almost forgot what it was like to be reading these text threads without this already in my head of like, okay, well, I can read between the lines here. I can see what's going on here. But there was certainly a phase in my life, not too long ago, in fact, probably just about 2 years ago, where the same thing was happening to me, where I would read the text thread and the date wasn't happening. And I was kind of not understanding what was going on during the approach, during the text thread, and not able to identify, oh, this is a girl that just is not interested in me, simply doesn't like me. And I can substantiate that claim just by the way that she's texting me, just by the way that she's phrasing her texts, right? Yeah, well, maybe when I get back from my trip, then maybe we can go on a date. All right. So, anyways, the first thing that I wrote down is she. So she represents the girl that you're approaching. Yeah, she can represent any girl that you're approaching that you're hoping to get a date with, and she has something that you want. So things are positioned this way by default. All right. So there's a reason why when all of us were first getting into approaching, we pretty much all fall into this category, unless you're a guy who already has been having success with girls in the past, and then you come across cold approach and you just add this to your tool belt. But if you're like most of us, where you're just not finding results with girls, period, maybe the occasional hookup on a dating app, and then you come across cold approach, well, it makes sense that when you're going in for your first few approaches, this could be your first 500 approaches if you haven't corrected this by then. It makes sense why things are positioned this way by default. It makes sense why we're going into the approach almost playing defense, almost saying like, here I am, I'm the product. I'm trying to sell myself to you. I'm trying to sell you on the fact that I'm a cool, good, chipper guy, yeah, a fun-loving guy, and I'm hoping that you as the girl buy into my product, meaning you give me your phone number, you agree to come on a date with me, we have a great time. And that's essentially how the beginner tends to position himself in these approaches. And so what I was getting at there is it makes sense why it's positioned this way from by default. It's because most of the time, guys that are getting into cold approach are just simply not getting laid at the cadence that they would like already, right? They're not getting laid consistently, or at least as consistently as they would like. And so it's true what I'm saying, right? In that they don't have yet what she has to offer, right? They don't have it yet. And that being the sex, right? So she has something you want being the sex. So it makes sense that if you're a guy who isn't getting the results right now, then you're by default positioning yourself in these conversations, and certainly in those text thread back and forth conversations, in this manner. And you're probably doing this without you even realizing it. What's going on, Jay? Thank you, boys, for liking the stream. I really appreciate that. So you're probably doing this without you even realizing that you're doing it. All right. So the next thing I wrote is, so long as your need is still there, she'll always have this power over you. All right. So it would be amazing, right? If I could just wave a magic wand and I could fix this little area of your approach with a snap of a finger, right? With a wave of a wand. That would be great. But unfortunately, that's not the case. As long as your need is still there, your need being your sex drive, your need for this testosterone release, as long as that need is still there, then she will always have this default power over you. So each time that you're going in for your approach, you're always going to bring that same needy, desperate energy into the approach with you, because the need is still not satiated. Yeah. And so you're walking over to this girl and you haven't gotten laid in X months. A couple of girls flaked, a couple phone numbers you were texting, they ghosted, whatever. Now you're walking up to this new girl and you're still bringing all of that baggage with you. You still know in the back of your head, I'm not getting laid right now. I'm not getting laid consistently right now. And so you're walking over to this girl with this default positioning of, you have something I need. I don't yet have a way to fulfill this need. I'm hoping you're going to be my way to fulfill this need. This is a very nerdy roundabout way of saying I hope you go on a date with me. But essentially, like, we're breaking it down. We're going real, like, deep into the weeds right now. That's essentially what's happening, right? And so long as your need is still there, she'll always have this power over you. And depending on how you look at it, the unfortunate or the fortunate news about this is that you will always have this need, because this need is driven by our hormone. Yeah, this need is driven by the testosterone that our testicles are producing on a daily basis. Yeah, and so there essentially is no escaping this need. We'll talk about what the true escape is towards the end of the live stream here. But essentially, until you've satiated that need, you're still jerking off to Pornhub every night, right? You're still in your bathroom busting into a sock. That's not satiating your need, right? And so long as the need is still there, she will always have this default positioning over you in these approaches, because you're approaching her as a guy who does not yet have what he wants. You're approaching her as a guy who still has an air of desperation about him. Yeah, an air of neediness about him. All right. And that need that we're talking about is not going away, because your testicles are forever producing this testosterone. That is what's fueling this need. Yeah. And so, we could argue maybe around what are the ages? 45, 50 years old, it's going to taper off. 60, 70 years old, it's going to taper off even more, right? Hopefully by the time we're 80, we're going to be free of this need. But you see the point, right? She'll always have this power over you, seeing as though you don't have a way to satiate that need right now. Okay. So hopefully this is making sense. Yes, Wing Bro, what's going on, Joseph? Good to see you, dog. So next thing that I wrote on the whiteboard here is, by eradicating the need for what she has, you position yourself differently in the conversation. All right, so we're going to be getting here. Let me read this one sec. Yeah, perfect. All right. So the next bullet point is, I don't want to overstep what I'm going through here. So let's just start here. So by eradicating the need for what she has, you are positioning yourself differently in the conversation. So now let's use me as the example. All right. So I'm a guy who's essentially broken free of this pattern of default positioning myself. Now, that's not to say all of my approaches go well. That's not to say I don't ever give off a needy, desperate vibe when I'm going over to a girl. This is much more likely to happen if it's a girl that I see is like way above me, right? Oh, she's too mature for me, too old for me, too pretty for me. Doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to these days, but still that's going to happen, right? I come across a girl that's like supermodel level, and she looks like she's wealthy, and she looks like she's more mature and older than me, right? So I'm still going to feel these like feelings of inadequacy. So it's a lot more likely that it'll come out in my approaches in those circumstances. But 99% of the time, I'm not walking over with an air of desperation or neediness anywhere in my body, anywhere with the energy that I'm giving off, that I'm radiating, because I have eradicated this need for what she has. So eradicating the need for what she has means I am already sexually satisfied. I'm not a guy that is living in a constant state of sexual frustration. I'm not a guy who is doing a bunch of approaches and none of them are converting into dates, and none of the dates are coming back with me. That's not my reality. That's not what's going on in my life. So because that's not my reality, when I walk over to the same girl that you would have walked over to, right? When I walk over to the girl, things are by default positioned differently. And I'm gonna explain exactly what I mean by the positioning and stuff, but just bear with me here. Things are already positioned differently because I'm walking over knowing within myself, my body, my brain, it already knows, look, she's hot, she looks great and all, but like, this isn't make it or break it for me. I do not by any means need this girl to come out on a date with me to satisfy the need. The need is already satisfied. I'm not in a position where I'm like, I need this date. I need this date to happen. Oh my God, it's been months. It's been weeks. Nothing like that, right? So because that's my reality, when I'm walking over and speak, and notice how I'm not even talking about what I'm saying yet. I'm not even talking about how I'm standing, right? So this isn't, I'm not talking about mechanics here. I'm talking about when you're walking over, there are these undertones in your tonality, in, let's say, your word choice and the phrasing you're using, in the way that you're looking at her, certainly. But there are these undertones amongst all of what's going on that are radiating vibes of either I'm a guy who's needy, desperate, doesn't have much dating activity, doesn't really know what I'm doing, feels like I'm over my head, I feel like you're too good for me, or you're radiating an energy similar to what I'm radiating, which is I'm walking over and I'm going, Okay, you look great. I'm sure of myself. I'm satisfied within myself. I don't need you. I'm not desperate. I'm not a needy guy, but I would like to take you out if the feeling is mutual. That's essentially what I'm radiating when I go over. So that's why I talk so much about this isn't about how tall or short you are, rich or poor, strong or weak. None of that, right? This isn't about I have curly hair, you have straight hair, vice versa. None of this shit matters nearly as much as guys think it does. What actually matters here is the inner work, right? Is the self-belief. Because I can simplify all of what I'm just saying right here into I just believe in myself. I am at peace with who I am, with what I can do, with my skill set. Yeah, with my self-belief is intact to such an extent that when I walk over, things position themselves in the interaction, right? Verbally position themselves differently for me than things position themselves for you for this reason. All right. So yeah. So, anyways, I say by eradicating the need for what she has, you position yourself differently in the conversation. Yeah. So I'm not radiating these vibes of like, oh my God, I need you. Please stop for me. Please stop and talk to me. Please do this. Please do that. How are some ways that guys can give off these vibes, radiate these vibes of I'm needy, I'm desperate, I hope that things go well? Firstly, I said I wouldn't talk too much about mechanics, but here we are. Firstly, definitely about how you're stopping the girl. So if you're a guy that is stopping the girl in a way where you're trying to save face, meaning you're trying to stop her diagonally, you're trying to stop her from the side, you're not getting fully in front of her, you're not projecting your voice, and instead you're trying to take like the path of least resistance in these approaches, which means only going for girls that don't have a bunch of people around. Maybe she's at an isolated bus stop. Yeah. And even then you can't walk firmly over to her. You're still kind of like, you're scurrying over slowly and steadily. You're pretending to look around instead of looking right at her as you're approaching her. You're pretending to look around. Like you're getting in front of her and you're still deciding whether or not you're going to say something. And then you finally say it. And it just feels a little awkward and cringy and just odd, right? That's a great example of a guy who he's so worried about this need that he has within himself. And he's so worried about other people realizing, oh my God, he's going over to hit on this girl, that you compare that to an approach where the guy's walking over firmly, getting right in front of her, stopping her in her tracks. Whoever is around, it doesn't matter. Now we're talking about a guy that just simply has more self-belief, that simply doesn't care what these people think. Yeah. Is that making sense? So, anyways, continuing on, I say if your need is already met, then you will compare her to the person who is already satisfying your need. All right. So if your need is not already met, then you don't have anything to compare this girl to. So you're always in this defense position where you're going, essentially what you're telling the girl is, I have no girls right now. I have no way to satiate this sexual urge that I'm feeling all the time. So I'm hoping that you're going to be the sexual outlet, even though we're just meeting. And I know that's a lot of pressure to put on you, blah, blah, blah. But I'm hoping it's going to be you. And so you're like, you're what the trend that I tend to see with a guy that's in that position is he's trying to do the fewest number of approaches possible in order to get a date lined up. When when one of those very few approaches does go decently, I mean, just not even talking about how poor of an approach it typically is anyways, right? It's like he's trying to do maybe two, maybe three max approaches in hopes that one of those girls is going to give him her phone number, right? Then what the guy is doing is he's taking the two or three phone numbers that he's able to gather from the fewest number of approaches that he can possibly do, and he's texting that until the lead literally fizzles out. He's texting the girl until she literally stops replying to him, or literally just flat out ghosts him and never texts back. Yeah, that's the trend that I see with the guy that doesn't have his need met yet. Is he's trying to approach the fewest number of girls possible to get a phone number or a date. When he does finally get a phone number, an Instagram or whatever, he texts the girl to completion, right? Literally, she could be disrespecting the fuck out of him. We got the live stream from a few days ago where the girl is dissing his bar choices when he's trying to line up a date and going, "Oh, that's funny. You want to take me to a college bar? You must be young." And then he presents her with more options, and then she disses those options. And then he goes, "Please, can you pick a bar then?" And she picks a bar, and he goes, "Sure, let's go to your bar." And then she goes, "Oh, actually, before we agree to this date, you seem a little young. You seem a little immature. I might be too old for you." And it's like text after text after text after text. She is continuing to disrespect the guy right in front of his face, right? He's reading and replying to each of these texts. This is what I mean, right? This is a guy who still has an air of desperation about him, because there's no way that I'm going to continue replying to a girl that's treating me that way. But it makes sense why you are, right? Because you're trying to do the fewest number of approaches possible to get the result. You're trying to get the fewest number of phone numbers you need to get the result, right? You're like, oh, I got three numbers. Hopefully one of these three goes somewhere. So I'm just going to text, 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 reply, 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 even if she's metaphorically slapping you and back, bitch slapping you in the face the entire time. You're going to continue to reply because you're like, well, my alternative to her, my if I end up not replying to this girl, the first thing you're thinking is, what if she did end up coming on a date with me, even though she was being extremely difficult and extremely disrespectful to me on this text thread? I mean, I'm so desperate that I don't even want to extinguish that option prematurely. I'm gonna let her ghost me before I choose the path of self-respect and just stop replying to the girl, right? That's the first thing you're thinking is, oh no, what if? But the second and the far more scary thought that creeps into your head when you're evaluating a text from a girl who just simply is not interested in you is you're also going, oh, that also means that I'm going to have to go back out and I'm going to have to do more approaches and I'm going to have to put myself in more uncomfortable situations. Yeah. And so we need to shift our thinking here, shift our paradigm from like least amount of work, least amount of reps, least amount of FaceTime possible with these girls, and just swing the entirely opposite direction. Now I'm getting ahead of myself because this is what we're going to be talking about towards the end. So let's continue on. So yeah, the last thing I said was if your need is already met, so if you're already sexually satisfied, you will instead of walking over to her and positioning things in a way where you're like, please, like, excuse me, where you're giving off the energy of please like me, please go on a date with me, please respond somewhat positively to my approach so I feel better about myself, right? You're putting a whole lot of pressure on this girl to validate you, essentially, is what you're after, right? Please, please, please validate me. Please make me feel good about myself. Please make me feel like I'm worth something. Please make me feel like girls are gonna like me. And it's like you're unknowingly putting all of this pressure on this girl to provide all of this for you. But then you take a guy like me who's walking over and I'm putting none of that pressure on the girl, right? So when I'm walking over and I'm shooting my shot, I'm keeping things very light and very fun and very just off the wall and we're talking about random shit. And yes, sometimes we get more serious, we dial in a bit more, we get to know each other in a serious way as well. Typically that more so happens on the date anyways. But the overall vibe of the approach, start to finish, is I'm walking over in a very bold, brash manner. So that's already communicating to the girl, this guy is not dependent on whatever I have to do or say to get him to feel a certain way, right? So if a guy's walking over in such a bold, audacious manner, he's pretty much communicating to the world, I already feel good about myself to do this in front of everybody. I do not care what you guys think about me. Even to the girl, he's almost essentially communicating that, right? Like, I understand this is socially abnormal. I still don't care because I'm a guy who goes after what I want and I go after what I want fully, right? And so that's why I'm fully getting in front of her. I'm saying to the world, I don't care what you think. I don't care that this is bold. I don't care that this is audacious. And I don't care that most of you watching me would never do this. I really don't care. I'm going to do it, right? I'm referring to the bystanders, by the way. Versus the guy who's going over, in the most meek path of least resistance way possible, is essentially communicating to the world and to the girl, okay, please don't look at me. Please, not too many people look at me. Please don't, I don't want too many heads to turn. Oh, please, please, I don't want this to be a thing. I don't want the spotlight to be on me and the girl. Please make this as easy as possible. Yeah. And then you're getting in front of her. You're not projecting your voice. You're going, please, I don't want too many heads to turn. I don't want to make a scene. I don't want too many people to see or hear what I'm doing. Right. So already off the bat, you're positioning yourself in a very poor kind of a way. That's just the approach itself, right? But then when we start to talk about the content of what's being discussed, right? And you watch an infield with me, and I'm all of a sudden I'm just pointing out the girl's vape, right? I'm going, oh, you look gorgeous, you look amazing. What are you up to? Whoa, is that a vape in your hand? No, you're a flight attendant. You can't bring that on the plane. Put that away. No, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. Don't do that. All of a sudden, it's lighthearted. It's fun. I'm focused on optimizing our experience together, our first interaction together. I'm just focused on making that as fun and vibrant as possible, as lighthearted as possible. Yeah. And then you pan over to the guy that's very desperate and he's just focused on continuing the conversation in hopes that the girl doesn't walk away, right? His main focus is, please don't leave this conversation too early because I need to work myself up to the courage to ask for your phone number anyways. I need you to stay in here and talk to me so I can feel good about myself and I can validate myself, right? And it's like this heaviness to the conversation is what the desperate guy is typically bringing into the conversation. So that's what I mean. Things are by default positioned in a poor way because of how you're going about the approach itself. Yeah, you're in the conversation and you're asking, oh, what are you up to? And she says, oh, I'm just headed to work. What do you do for work? Oh, well, I do this. How do you like your work? And she can tell that as she's giving you answers to all of these checkpoint questions that you're firing off, she can tell, I can tell, everybody around can tell that you're not even listening to what she's saying. You're just so worried about what you're going to say next. And if, whether or not that's going to keep her in the conversation longer, you're just thinking about, okay, is this a point where I should ask for her phone number or should I try to set up a date? That's what you're thinking is like, how can I navigate this conversation in a way that leads to the result that I want? That's like primary forefront of your mind. So it makes sense why things are positioned in a way where it seems like the girl is almost vetting you, right? Because you're doing this to yourself. You're prematurely putting yourself in that position where you're like, you have what I want. I don't have another way of satiating that desire. So please stay in the conversation longer, is what you're saying when you go, whoa, so what made you decide to be a shopkeeper, whatever she's doing, right? Just asking her the most boring, mundane questions because you're not actually worried about the answer. You're just worried about keeping her in the conversation longer at this point. And I get it, right? So I'm not berating you. I understand it. This is what I've gone through as well. So this is why I start to help with these different areas. This is why we do the find the fun exercise in the group community, where we just focus on keeping things lighthearted and flirty and fun. Yeah, it's because you're trying to communicate something different, right? You're not trying to communicate to this girl, you have what I need. I don't have a means of satiating that need. So I need it to be you. If it's not going to be you, I'm going to feel like shit about myself. I'm going to hate myself. I'm going to give up on life, but I'm probably going to eventually go and approach another girl and then put all of that same heavy weight and pressure on her in hopes that she's the one who satiates the need. Instead of going over with that mentality, what I'm trying to teach here is to go over, firstly, is to attach your sense of self-worth to your action rather than the result that you're getting from the action. That's the first thing, right? Is instead of thinking that you're a piece of shit because you didn't get the date, think that you're a fucking rock star because you went in the first place. I mean, pat on the fucking back, guy. It's super easy to not do that ever in your life. Most guys will never, right? So first things first, pat yourself on the back for going in. Now we're looking for ways to improve what you're already doing, which is taking the action. So the first easy step to solving this desperation positioning that's happening in these conversations is to stop attaching your sense of self-worth to the fucking result, to whether or not the girl comes on a date with you and sleeps with you. Stop attaching your sense of self-worth to that result. Instead, literally take it, remove it, and put it on the action that you're taking. This takes like conscious, intentional effort. You have to consciously start to think about, I don't care that the result is or is not happening. All I care about is whether or not I'm hitting the metrics that I set for myself. If you told yourself you're going to go outside and do 5 approaches, then the only time you should feel bad about yourself is if you chickened out and did 4 or 3 or none instead. You shouldn't be pissed that none of them resulted in a date. You should be patting yourself on the back if you did the approaches, right? If you did 5 and instead you said, fuck it, I'm going to double it, and you did 10 when you set out an intention to do 5, that's a job well done. And maybe you can't see why this is going to lead you to results quite yet, but that's where the trust comes in, right? That's where the faith comes in, because I am a guy who's already walked this path. So I can just tell you with certainty. Not only has it been me, but I'm connected to so many guys that have walked the same path. And so I can see what's going on. I can see how this path looks, right? I'm turning around and I'm looking at where you're at. And I'm like, dude, trust me, stop focusing on trying to get laid. Instead, focus on building the skill. Focus on optimizing and improving the controllables. Stop thinking you're a piece of shit because you're not getting laid. You're just like most guys. Most guys are in the same position as you. The difference is at least you're the one that's taking action to get yourself out of that position. Is that making sense? I'm detouring a bit, but let's go. All right. So continuing on. So the last thing I said once again is, if your need is already met, you will compare her to the person who is already satisfying your need. So instead of being, okay, excuse me. So typically we're talking about the guy who isn't getting any sexual activity. Therefore, he feels frustrated. He's sexually frustrated. And when he's going over to the girl, he's positioning himself in a way that's like, please like me, please date me, please go on a date with me, etc. Now, let's compare this to a guy who already has his sexual needs met to a certain extent. So that could mean he's already seeing a girl, he's already seeing or dating a girl or a few girls, right? He's already seeing this girl, or he just came back from this trip and he had a great fling over there, whatever. But he already knows that he can make this. Doesn't even mean that you're actively getting your sexual needs met actively, like right now. This can just mean that you already know that you can make that happen because you've got a skill set like this, for example, right? So even just the knowing that you can satisfy your sexual urges is enough to make this apply, to make this applicable. So if you're a guy who already knows that he can get his sexual needs met, then you stop going into the approach trying to pass her interview in hopes that she gives you her phone number, in hopes that she blesses you with a date. And instead, you start to shift the energy, you start to shift the positioning in the conversation. So instead, let's say you got a girl that you're already seeing and you can tell, I like this girl, but I'm still going to be going out doing my thing. Then instead, what you're doing is you're walking over to this girl and you are almost vetting her in a way. So you're looking at this girl and you're starting to think in your head while you're talking, while you're having a good time, you're starting to think, well, firstly, is this even going to work out, or is this the girl that's going to be out of the country tomorrow, right? Is this a tourist, or is this a girl that's going to be around? Okay, wait, does this girl live anywhere nearby me, or is it going to take a 100-mile drive for me to get to her? That's something you start to think about, right? You get in front of her and you think, is she as pretty as I initially thought? Well, she's cute, but like, there's something about what's going on with her face right now that I don't like as much as I initially thought I did. Or you're talking to her and you're going, wow, she's absolutely gorgeous, but she's pretty dense. Yeah, like when I'm talking to her, she's not getting my jokes. Everything's flying over her head, or she can't keep a conversation. She looks too shy. I'm talking to her. We have no similar interests. Do you see how the positioning is different, right? So the desperate guy is going over. He's not worried about any of this. He's just worried about, please, please, please like me. I'll book a fucking flight to Austin, Texas if it means I get to sleep with you. Oh, I'll call off work tomorrow if it means I get to spend the night with you, and all of this stuff. Whereas the guy who's not desperate is thinking in a completely different way. He's in the same approach with the same girl, but since it's a different mentality, he's thinking, is this even going to work out right now? Like, this girl's cute, but like, do I like her better than the girl I'm already seeing? Or do I like her better than the girl I was just seeing? Or do I even like her enough at all to spend any money on her? Would I even want to go out and buy this girl drinks? Would I even want to get to know this girl? Or is, the conversation's kind of flat right now anyways? And so you're thinking these things during the approach. And so the positioning is different now. You're not behaving in a way that is communicating to the girl, I need something from you. I don't have my needs met currently. So please be the person to satisfy my needs. That's the desperate guy. Yeah. Instead, what you're communicating with the undertones of the conversation is, I am a guy who already has my needs met. I'm not needy. Yeah. I'm not sexually frustrated. You have what I want, but you don't have what I need because my needs are already met. So you show up differently. Yeah. Does that make sense? That's why if you take me from 2 years ago and me from today, and then you put me in the same approach with the same girl, same circumstances, same weather pattern, same temperature, everything. Yeah. But a different person, it'll be night and day results. Because me from 2 years ago would have been going up to her, just communicating subliminally, please like me, please validate me, please make me feel good about myself, please don't walk away, please, I'm going to feel like shit if you walk away, I'm going to feel like shit if you stop giving me answers and stuff to go off of, I'm going to feel like, you're not as cute as I first thought, but it doesn't matter, I haven't gotten laid in a few months, please like me, right? That's how I was positioning things 2 years ago. Whereas the version of me today is going to go up to the girl and I'll be thinking, aside from the fun conversation that's going on, I'll just be thinking, does this even make sense? Right? This girl's cute and all, but, I was thinking about editing a video tonight. Do I really want to line up a date tonight? She said she's leaving tomorrow anyways. This is like the last day we can go on a date. I already had plans to meet up with the entourage later today, right? I just landed in Serbia. I had plans to meet up with Joseph and Balthus later today. This girl says today is going to be the only day for a date for us to go on a date. Do I really want to cancel my plans just to get laid? Not really, right? And it's like you just start to think with almost a different brain. Yeah, well, what's really happening is you're Prior, you were just thinking with your testosterone buildup, right? Prior, you were thinking with your sexually frustrated brain. Now you've released yourself from that. So you're thinking with like your authentic, true brain. Yeah, rather than your sexually frustrated, masked brain. Is that making sense? All right. So continuing on. Yes, we got some good comments. We'll get to those a bit later. So I kind of already got to this, but what I wrote on the whiteboard is then your energy goes from do you like me to do we like each other? And then ultimately, do I like you? Yeah. So that's, I mean, I could have simplified the entire live stream with essentially that sentence right there. So typically we start out as, do you like me? That's how we can summarize the approach when we're going up to the girl and we're beginners with this skill. Oftentimes, if we had to label a sentence onto that approach, the guy was going in with the energy of, do you like me? And he was almost self-positioning himself in that approach and in that conversation with that dynamic of like, hi girl, you're great. Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? Right? So that changes when you start to actually start getting results and satisfying your need. That changes to, do we like each other? And ultimately, do I like you? So, I mean, I'm kind of grouping those together because they're kind of both happening, right? So like the do we like each other would be like the next step. And then the do I like you would be like, okay, I already have some dates lined up. I already know what I can do. I already believe in myself. I already know that I can show you a good time. I already know that you're going to love me if I take you out on this date. I already know that you're going to want me. You're going to want to come back with me, all this stuff. So now I'm going over with that knowledge. I'm going over to find out, do I like you? Yeah. Now, I group that in with the do we like each other because obviously that you still have to satisfy that criteria, right? Because I can know all of this in the back of my head, but when I go over and approach the girl, she can just simply think that I'm an ugly piece of shit, right? I can just be the archetype of guy that she absolutely despises off the bat, right? And completely out of my control. What if she just doesn't like guys with long curly hair, right? What if she just doesn't like guys with piercings, or she only likes smooth faces instead of a beard? I'm being very specific here to show you that, yeah, it's I'm going in with the mentality of, do you like me? But there is a subtle version of her trying to figure out if she likes me also. So it's like it's a two-way street. But that's, the point is that's both of those is very different than, do you like me? So most guys are going over, they're disregarding whether or not they are even interested in the girl. They're just seeing her as a girl. They're like, well, shit, she looks good enough. Yeah, I haven't gotten laid in X number of weeks, X number of months. She will do. Yeah, she looks good enough. It doesn't even matter if I like her personality. It doesn't even matter if we connect. It doesn't even matter if we have a similar sense of humor. It doesn't even matter if I have to spend $100 on a long drive to go and see her. They're thinking with their testosterone buildup. And so they're going in there hoping, thinking, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? And we want to get over to the other side. Do we even like each other, right? Do I even like her? Okay. So the next thing I wrote is, it goes from buyer to seller. It goes from a buyer to seller dynamic to a buyer to buyer dynamic. Yeah. So at first you're walking over and it feels like buyer to seller. Yeah. So it feels like you're the seller, she's the buyer, and you're trying to sell your charm and charisma and all these lines that you're feeding to her and all this mechanics that you're thinking about. And, while she's replying to your question, you're already thinking about, what's another question I can ask to keep her around, hopefully to pique her interest, right? That's that buyer to seller dynamic. And we're trying to shift this to a buyer to buyer dynamic where you are buying into her and what she has to offer. She's also buying into you and what you have to offer. And as you're standing there conversating on the sidewalk, you're both deciding whether or not this is going to work, whether or not you're compatible, whether or not you even like each other. And if you don't, then you just go your separate ways. And here's the point though. At no point in that conversation, in that approach, did you tolerate disrespect. At no point in that conversation did you sound super needy or desperate by just grabbing her number anyways, right? Guys are typically gonna, that are starting out, they're typically gonna just try to be number collectors. Just hope that every approach leads to a phone number, and that makes them feel good about themselves, even though they can tell that she wasn't even that interested, that she gave her phone number out of courtesy, that she's probably not even ever gonna reply. They don't care, right? They don't even care about think about what you're telling your brain in those scenarios, right? You're almost communicating to yourself, yeah, I'm not really worth finding a girl that likes me truly right now as is. Instead, I'm just gonna shotgun spray and try to collect as many numbers as I can, and hope that one of them comes around. Hope that one of them likes me, even though I was still pursuing them after they were making it clear they're not interested, or they it's not going to work, right? Logistics are not going to work. Same thing over text, right, guys? You're almost training your brain to think in a desperate, needy, I'm a piece of shit kind of way when you're replying to these texts, right? When the girl is texting you, that's a stupid bar. That's a childish bar. Why'd you choose that? Oh, these are your other options. Those are stupid too. Yeah. Oh, you want me to pick a bar now? I guess I'm the man now, right? And she's like disrespecting you, and you're continuing to reply. You're training your brain to accept that treatment, right? You're training your brain. This is all we're worth, Ephraim. I guess we're just worth a bunch of girls with very minimal interest, and we're just going to try to convert them all into yes girls. We're just going to try to convert them all into dates. Which, by the way, even if those girls who are treating you in that manner over text thread, even if they end up coming out on the date, it's very likely the same thing's going to happen on the date. She's going to be disinterested on the date. She's going to be like, wow, I can't believe this guy still came out on this date, even though I was trying to dodge it with every fiber of my being, right? I was giving this guy every little piece of shit to hope that he can get the hint. But instead, his standards are so low. His self-worth, his self-belief is so low that he is willing to tolerate all of this disrespect in the hopes of just getting a date with me. Why am I even so great, right? And so now think about how things are positioned now. Now you're on the date. Now she's thinking, wow, this guy, he must not think much of himself. I was treating him like that. He still came out on the date. Not only did he come out on the date, now he's buying me drinks. Not only is he buying me drinks, but he's trying his best to like pull conversation out of me, right? That's when you start to see the girls that are on their phone on the dates, right? That are showing up late on the date and not apologizing for it, or flaking entirely, that are completely disinterested on the date, waiting for it to end while they can get as many drinks and as many entrees out of you as possible, with plans to never see you again. It's because you are enabling this sort of behavior. You're enabling it. You're encouraging it, right? You're showing her, well, even if you show me you're not interested on the approach, I'm still going to try to get your phone number. Even if you're not showing me much interest over text, I'm still going to try to line up a date with you. And you're putting the ball in her court. And anyways, I'm rambling at this point, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Okay. So one quick detour before I get to the last bullet point is something that I texted myself related to this topic, was how when I was in an MLM and when I was in sales, I was able to kind of pick up on this exact topic that I'm talking about today on this channel. So when I was in the multi-level marketing scheme, right, they taught us to position the conversation. They taught us to structure the conversation in such a way that rather than me being the seller and them being the buyer, they taught us how to flip the script so that it almost seemed as though they were the seller and I was the buyer, right? So this is just psychology. Yeah, you can go take some classes on this to understand what I'm talking about, but I'll try to break it down. You probably already understand what I'm talking about, but just to drive the point home. So I was trying to essentially recruit these random strangers into my business because that's how I can get a commission, get paid, and et cetera, right? Very standard scheme. I was 18 at the time. I forgive myself. But what I was taught while I was in this scheme was, well, Ephraim, typically people aren't going to be interested in joining whatever you have to offer if you're positioning it as like, you need their money for you to feel satisfied. You need their money for you to improve your life. You need their money. You need their resources. You need what they have. And then they're buying into you, whether or not they trust you. They taught me, instead of positioning things that way, what you should instead do is use tactics that shift the positioning so that they're almost begging to join your business. They're almost asking you, please, can I learn from you to join your business? And so one of the ways that this happened was, right, a very standard way to recruit would be to go out and say, hey, I've got this business opportunity. Are you interested in joining? Do you want to join? All right, show up to this meeting and then I'll show you how this works. And already, right, red flags are going off in their head. They're thinking, well, if you have such a great business opportunity, why are you so quick to share it with me? I'm a stranger. Why do you want me to come to this meeting? I'm a stranger. Why do you must want something from me, right? And it's this weird tension that gets built. Versus what they taught me to do was spark up very natural conversation with the person, right? With the stranger in the bread aisle of this grocery store. And as you're having this very natural conversation, start to drop breadcrumbs of what you're doing and what's going on. So that sounded something like, yeah, well, I'm washing windows right now. I just turned 19. but I'm not going to be doing this for long. I actually recently, my best friend, he introduced me to this couple. They're getting ready to retire when they're only 28. So they're pretty much teaching me exactly what they know. They're very generous. They took me under their wing after I pursued them for months, and so they're just showing me how they're doing that. But yeah, that's what I got going on. So anyway, how do you like being a carpenter, right? So do you see the difference in positioning there, right? So rather than going over and saying, "Hey, I've got this business opportunity. Do you want to join? Oh, do you do? Let me have your number. All right, let's go. Come show up to this meeting." And the red flags start to blare in their head. Instead of that, I was taught to subtly drop breadcrumbs of how great of an opportunity this is. And instead of inviting them into the opportunity, I just went back to normal conversation. So I dropped the breadcrumbs, right? My best friend introduced me to this couple. They're going to retire so young. They're helping me. They're out of the goodness of their heart. They're taking a young 19-year-old under their wing and they're trying to help me do the same. So that's what I'm doing right now. Anyways, Jim, what are you doing? How do you like carpentry, right? And all of a sudden, they just got bombarded with some information, right? They're thinking in their head, what? Retired at 28, they're 19-year-old trying to do the same. What the fuck? This sounds great. What is he? I wonder what he's doing. All of a sudden, it's piquing their interest. And then I just completely change the subject and I say, tell me about your shit dead end job that you're working, right? And so then what happened a lot of the time is they would bring it back to the conversation that, the breadcrumbs that I dropped, right? So a little later on in the conversation, they'd go, wait, sorry, did you say they're going to retire when they're 28? How on earth are they doing that? And so do you see how now the dynamic has shifted? Even though the true dynamic was I was the seller, they were the buyer, and I was trying to sell them a product, essentially meaning I was trying to sell them into my business. I was able to use words, phrasing, and language to position things in a way where they started leaning into me and they started asking questions about how to join what I had to offer, right? So they started going, 28, could you tell me more about that? Like, what? That's so young. How did they do that? And then I started, of course, same thing, dropping little breadcrumbs. I'm going, yeah, well, they've got this logistics business where they kind of work with a few different distributorships. They taught me how to use all this fancy phrasing and shit to confuse the people, of course, right? It's a scheme. But anyways, that's what I was doing, right? I'm going, oh yeah, they have these different distribution chains, and because they're using all of them, they're able to get things from wholesale and sell it to retail. And I'm using all this fancy phrasing and shit. And so I go, yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's too much to talk about here in this grocery store bread aisle, but yeah, it's a lot to go into. To be honest, I'm still learning. I just met them a few months ago. I'm still learning. So, but dude, tell me more about the carpentry though. Like, how long you been doing that? Same thing, right? Dropping breadcrumbs, they're leaning in, drop some more, they lean in some more, to the point where they would start to go, wait, okay, how do I learn what they're doing, or how can I learn this? And then do you see how now I am positioned as the buyer? They are positioned as the seller because they're trying to sell themselves to me, essentially sell themselves into my business. And then that's when I would quote unquote close, right? If we're trying to compare it to cold approach, that's when I would go say something like, well, look, I don't know you, right? So like this would be a long shot. Honestly, I don't know if I would want to put my neck on the line for a stranger like you, but I mean, Jim, you seem real ambitious. Like, it's not often that people ask me this many questions about what I'm doing. It's clear that like something's going on. Like, are you looking for another opportunity better than what you've got right now? Right. And that was like the golden question. And then they would go, yes, 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 please. I'm looking. And then I go, well, look, no promises. They got a lot on their plate. I can't commit to, I can't promise that they'll want to help you as well. But, I could pass your name along and we can see maybe they'll want to sit down with you if they have bandwidth. Probably not, but I could try. Right. And so then I would take their number down. I would go to the pyramid scheme thing and I would go, look, I got a new one. Look, they're coming. And from the very beginning, it was positioned in a way that they were leaning in, they were trying to join what I had to offer. And it's genius if you think about it, but it's genius used in a very poor, immoral, we could say, way, because obviously it ended up being a fucking scheme, which I wasn't aware of at the time. But all I'm trying to get at with that entire story is, notice how just with changing language and phrasing, just with changing like the structure of a conversation and how you're showing up in the conversation, notice how it can go from me trying to recruit somebody into a business to very quickly them trying to learn more about how to get recruited into a business, right? It's like same product, service, same company, same guy, Ephraim, trying to do the recruiting. But by using one method, people had red flags go off where they were thinking this must be a scam. This is too good to be true. If the business is so good, why do you want me to know about it? Versus just by changing how I'm phrasing things, just by putting the emphasis off of them joining me and instead talking about how great I'm doing and how shit they're doing, right? Highlighting how shit their current situation is. Just by changing a few things, now all of a sudden they started leaning into the conversation. They started trying to gather more information. And then I continued to pull back, right? I continued to go, I mean, we're strangers. I don't know if they got bandwidth right now. They're real busy. I just squeezed it in where I could work with them. So I don't know if they'll also want to work with you, but I mean, I could pass your name along, right? Obviously, what's going on behind the scenes was every person that was leaning in like that and trying to learn more about the business, I quickly told the mentor, look, I got a new one, and he's booking all these meetings. Sure, tell him to come on this day, right? So essentially, I was lying, right? I was saying, I don't know if they'd be open to it. They were. Every time I brought somebody new, they were more than happy to sit down with them because that generated us more money. Does that make sense? So I'm sorry for going on that long ass tangent, but I thought it was worth talking about like how just changing the structure and the wording and the phrasing of the conversation can change essentially how everybody feels about the conversation, right? So now we're bringing it back to cold approach. That's exactly what's happening in cold approach as well. Yeah. It's just that we don't have these conversational structures to use when we're walking over to the girl. So you're just doing your best. But what's happening is the desperation, the neediness, right? The inadequacy that you feel right now, it always manifests itself into that conversation. So essentially what's happening is the same as if you were Ephraim in the pyramid scheme trying to use the ineffective way of selling the opportunity, which would be me walking over and going, hey, nice shoes. By the way, I've got this great business. I know some people that are going to be millionaires soon. Do you want to join? That would be red flag, red flag, red flag. Why does this guy want to, why would this guy want to include me in this business if he's going to be a millionaire, right? So comparing that to cold approach, that would be the same as a desperate guy walking over to a girl and going, oh, by the way, you look beautiful. Anyways, what are you doing? What are you up to? Where are you from? What do you do for work? What do you do at school? What else do you do? Oh yeah, please. Essentially what he's saying is, please don't walk away. Please don't leave me. I need you to talk to me for longer. I need you to give me your phone number. I need this date to happen. I need you to make me feel good about myself. I need you to validate me. He's essentially saying all of this stuff without saying it. And so the red flags are going off in her head, right? This is why your conversations aren't going anywhere. Boom, there's the title, right? This is why your approaches aren't going anywhere. There are so many red flags that are going off in her head because she's thinking, well, okay, if this guy is so confident and bold and charismatic and stuff, why is he continuing to stand here in this conversation, even though I'm clearly showing that I'm not interested in him? Yeah. If this guy is so bold and he's so audacious, yeah, he can walk over to girls like this, he must be a bold guy, right? Then why is it that when I'm brushing him off and going, yeah, well, maybe next week, yeah, well, maybe next month I'll think about going on a date with you. Why is he still continuing to lean in further and still going, yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, can I please just take your number down? Yeah, let me just take your number down. Well, you know what? I'll just take your Instagram down. I'll just take your Instagram and then I'll just text you. And then if you find time, girl, if you find time, then yeah, let's have the date. And she's calling your bluff essentially, right? She's going, if this guy is so cool, audacious, bold, ballsy, whatever, then why is he tolerating disrespect? Why is he leaning in further when I lean back? Why is he satisfied with just taking my number down, even though I told him I'm not even that interested in seeing him? Like, why, right? Why is this the case? She's calling your bluff, right? So she's going, this guy probably doesn't get as much as he's portraying. This guy probably isn't nearly as confident as he's trying to demonstrate, right? This guy probably doesn't actually believe in himself as much as he's letting on right now, because if he did, he would have walked away as soon as I started disrespecting him. If he did, he would have been fine with the fact that I'm giving him signs that I'm not interested, and he would have just turned around and walked and approached the next girl, kind of like I do, right? And if this guy was so bold, so audacious, so confident, he wouldn't stand here, tolerate this, and try to work this lead until it fizzles out. Instead, he would just take the hint, realize that I'm not interested, and walk away. So because of the very fact that he's tolerating all of this extra fluff that I'm putting in front of him, that tells me that this guy is not nearly as experienced as he's making it seem, right? He's not nearly as confident as he first let on when he came over and did this approach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is that making sense? Now, comparing a person that is solid and has a solid foundation of self-belief before ever going in for that approach in the first place, that would be like the version of me who was selling the opportunity effectively, right? So instead of going, I have this business opportunity, I'm going to make millions, you should join, boom, red flag, red flag, red flag. Instead, I would go, I would breadcrumb it in, right? I would go, yeah, just met this couple. They're going to retire young. They're helping me learn what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, what about you? And I'd throw the ball back into their court, and that would pique their interest, right? All right, we're going to end the stream early, but we'll talk soon. All right. Peace.